local fire departments have become the largest providers of pre-hospital emergency medical services in North America. In many communities, EMS responses make up more than 75% of the fire department's call volume. However, in spite of their major EMS contribution, until now, fire departments have had no scientifically based tools for determining optimum EMS crew size, configuration, and deployment. The lack of such information has had a serious impact on the health and safety of EMS personnel. On any given day, 10% of EMTs and paramedics are absent from work because of job-related illness or injuries, and close to 25% of EMS workers reported at least one work-related injury in the previous 6 months. A study conducted in 2000 by the Department of Labor found that injury rates for EMS workers were higher than rates reported for workers in any other industry. As a part of the Firefighter Safety and Deployment Study, researchers designed a series of EMS field experiments to determine the impact of 3 specific variables on an EMS response. From these variables, 3 study questions were prepared. What is the effect of first responder crew size on EMS task times? What is the effect of ALS personnel placement on EMS task times? What is the effect of the number of ALS-trained personnel on EMS task times? More than 100 separate experiments tested the effect of these variables on the safety of responders and on the operational efficiency and effectiveness of fire departments responding to emergency medical incidents. The experiments used 3 realistic EMS scenarios faced by first responders daily. The first involved patient access and subsequent removal from the scene of an incident. Traditionally, fire departments measure total response time from departure from the fire station to arrival at the incident location. This does not include the time it takes to locate and access the patient following arrival. One study suggests this interval runs an additional 1/4 to 1/3 to the average response time. Patient access and removal experiments took place at the Montgomery County, Maryland Safety Training Academy. This building simulated a garden apartment. The experiment assumed the patient was on the 3rd floor with access by stairs. As this set of experiments measured only access and removal, no patient assessment or treatment were performed. First responders arrived in one of 4 experimental configurations: an ambulance plus an engine with 2 crew members, an ambulance plus an engine with a crew of 3, an ambulance plus an engine with 4 crew members, and just an ambulance with a crew of 2. Response data from more than 300 U.S. fire departments show that when dispatched simultaneously, the engine will arrive prior to the ambulance 80% of the time. Therefore, arrival times were offset accordingly. The second scenario involved time-to-task experiments related to the care of a victim with multi-system trauma. In this scenario, a worker had fallen from a 25-foot ladder at a construction site and was accessible only by foot. A gymnasium simulated the patient location. Responding crews entered the gym and walked about 40 feet to the patient, a 150-pound training mannequin. Initially, they brought the standard equipment with them: an airway bag including suction, oxygen, spinal mobilization equipment, a trauma bag, a radio, and a clipboard.
Had a bad day, huh?
In this scenario, the mannequin could speak, voiced by one of the experiment timers.
What's your name?
Joe,
How old are you?
55.
And answered basic questions until a planned point in the sequence where the patient would lose consciousness. For transport, the patient was packaged onto a backboard and carried with the equipment about 40 feet to a waiting stretcher. Each experiment of this labor-intensive scenario assumed a first responder engine and an ambulance were dispatched with staggered arrival times. In these experiments, the engine had crews of 2, 3, or 4 firefighters. The ambulance had a crew of 2. The experiment varied the number and placement of advanced and basic life support personnel over 4 conditions: 1 ALS on the engine and 1 on the ambulance, BLS only on the engine and 2 ALS on the ambulance, 1 ALS on the engine and BLS only on the ambulance, BLS only on the engine and 1 ALS on the ambulance. As you will see, the results from these various configurations were sometimes surprising. The third scenario entailed time-to-task experiments in the care of a patient with chest pain who goes into cardiac arrest after the responders arrive. These experiments were conducted at the Fairfax County, Virginia Fire and Rescue Department EMS Simulation Center in a laboratory set up to simulate a home setting.
Hey, sir, how you doing?
Responders entered the room carrying an airway bag, oxygen, a drug bag, and a defibrillator.
Is it sharp pain, dull pain? Crushing pain, okay.
For the patient, the study used SimMan, an adult-sized mannequin able to make vocal responses and to produce vital signs, including a pulse, heartbeat, lung sounds, and blood pressure. At the pre-assigned time, the patient went into cardiac arrest, and crews had to adjust for that.
Sir? Sir? Checking.
Can you hear me?
Checking for a pulse, no
No
pulse.
pulse.
All right, let's get him on the floor. Everybody clear?
When crews completed on-scene patient care tasks, they packaged the patient onto a backboard and stretcher, and then removed the patient and all equipment from the room to conclude the experiment. As with the trauma experiments, crew size on the engine varied from 2 to 4 firefighters. The ambulance had a crew of 2. The experiment also varied the number and placement of advanced and basic life support personnel, using the same 4 configurations as the trauma experiment. What you are about to see are side-by-side comparisons of the effects of crew size and ALS configuration on the delivery of emergency medical services in trauma and cardiac response. Another important factor in all types of incidents is elapsed time in patient access and removal. This study demonstrates conclusively that in every scenario, the use of larger first responder crews provides a faster response and treatment for the patient and a safer environment for firefighters providing emergency medical services. In the access part of the patient access and removal experiments, crews with 3 or 4 first responders reach the patient roughly 30 seconds sooner than smaller crews of just 2 first responders. And patient removal times were even more dramatic. The tasks were labor-intensive and required heavy lifting, descending stairs while carrying a patient, carrying all equipment downstairs, and getting the patient and equipment through multiple doors onto a stretcher and into an ambulance. Crews with 3 or 4 first responders completed removal 1 minute 12 seconds to 1 minute 30 seconds faster than crews with only 2 first responders. All crews with first responders completed removal substantially sooner than the ambulance-only crew. The difference ranged from 2 minutes 36 seconds to 4 minutes 6 seconds faster. These results suggest that a significant time advantage can be gained in patient access and removal by deploying crews of 3 or 4 first responders rather than 2-person first responder crews or an ambulance alone. In the trauma experiments, first responder crews with 4 members showed a clear advantage, completing the response significantly faster than the smaller crews.
Are you on any medications?
First responders with a crew of 4 completed all trauma tasks 1 minute 45 seconds faster than the 3-person crews, and they completed all the tasks 3 minutes 25 seconds faster than 2-person crews. The effect of ALS deployment proved significant in terms of increasing operational efficiency. Having one ALS provider with the first responder engine allowed them to complete the tasks quicker by undertaking tasks simultaneously whenever possible, and to start the later tasks in the series earlier than the crews with both ALS personnel on the ambulance. Crews configured with an ALS provider on the engine and one ALS provider on the ambulance completed all required tasks 2 minutes and 15 seconds faster than the crews with a BLS engine and 2 ALS providers on the ambulance.
Can you describe the pain for me?
In the cardiac scenario, the results were generally similar to those of the trauma experiment.
Does it go anywhere?
Regardless of the placement of ALS providers, the crews with 4 first responders completed all tasks sooner than the crews with only 2 or 3. 4-person crews were 1 minute 10 seconds faster than the 3-person crews at accomplishing the tasks from arrival at the patient to completion of packaging, and the 4-person crews were 2 minutes and 40 seconds faster than the 2-person crews. What about the time taken to accomplish critical tasks immediately after the patient goes into cardiac arrest? In this life or death situation, the larger the crew, the better the results. The 4-person crews completed the tasks 50 seconds faster than the 3-person crews, and 1 minute and 25 seconds faster than 2-person crews. And ALS configuration? As in the trauma experiment, crews responding with one ALS provider on both the engine and the ambulance completed all the tasks in the experiment more quickly. Complete details of the experimental design and results of this study are available in the report on EMS Field Experiments, available at www.firereporting.org.